In case you missed the previous video, here are some highlights. I love the James Bond franchise. Drinking problem. Yeah, but you're a dog and you don't know shit. Really intense. Good kill though. Holy shit, she is 22. Is a bit lackluster. A fucking Ouroboros. Danger. Yeah, we get to see how he gets his iconic scar, but fuck off. Now, on to round 2. The World Is Not Enough was released in 1999 and directed by the late Michael Apted, who directed mostly dramatic works, Coal Miner's Daughter being his most acclaimed film, but he's also appreciated in the late aughts and throughout the 2010s, directing prestige TV with Rome, Ray Donovan, and Bloodline. The film was written by Purvis and Wade, as well as Bruce Firestein, who wrote all of the previous Brosnan films. The opening montage is awkwardly placed. Like, almost 15 minutes pass throughout the movie before we get to the opening montage. In those 15 minutes, it includes 2 countries, a fight scene, a resolution to that fight scene, a bombing, a boat chase that turns into a car chase that turns back into a boat chase, and it ends with a hot air balloon exploding. The song, The World Is Not Enough, performed by Garbage, is actually a sneaky good Bond theme. A nice mixture of the horns and strings of a classic Bond theme with the power of the 90s alt-rock, post-grunge sensibilities of the band. The sequence has oil dripping, oil derricks bobbing, and, you know, there's a sun there, and sexy ladies. All of those tie into the plot, what with the nuclear fission of the sun being like the nuclear bomb, and the oil being the character of Elektra, who is an oil heiress. And the themes brought up by the title is brought in, like the world is not enough, and sexy ladies are dancing on globes. The sequence is nice. Not thrilling, but nice. 3 out of 5. The action set pieces in The World Is Not Enough are fine. They're fine. They have clear stakes, rising tension as the film progresses, and Bond implements a bunch of creative ways to accomplish his goals. They just don't have the pizzazz you want in a Bond film. They're serviceable, and the skydiving snowmobiles do what took over a decade and a half to do for the Fast and the Furious franchise to do, namely motor vehicles falling from the sky. But why am I not excited? It's not just that this film is over 20 years old. Jurassic Park is even older, and those action set pieces still are as thrilling as they were back in the day. To get to the problem, let's look at the skiing scene. It's kind of hard to evoke tension while we've got a wide shot of Pierce Brosnan skiing down a blue run.
Back at the lodge.
But every Bond film has a diamond in the rough. And for this movie, it is the sequence at the docks, where Bond is attacked by gun thugs and, wait for it, helicopters with spinning blades attached to them. It's fabulous. And they planted these helicopters earlier as they were clearing trees for a pipeline. And they get paid off in the best way possible. I will even allow for the cheesy CGI of the blades spinning and going into the camera as the helicopter explodes, because it's just what you want. But other than that single standout action sequence, the fights are kind of dull. And it really doesn't help that it has a very forgettable third act fight sequence. 3 out of 5. For Bond girls, Denise Richards is miscast as Dr. Christmas Jones. It's not the name that I have a problem with. If you don't like that the name was only made for the pun that
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
I'm sorry. You have not been paying attention to the series, with names like Pussy Galore, Honey Rider, and Sylvia Trench. Christ, Fleming, you wore your misogynistic tendencies on your fucking sleeves. Denise Richards is not a terrible actor. She's at her best when she is a sexy cougar in a college town that is crazy about football, or a fascist ideal of a woman in the military, in space, versus bugs. Not as a nuclear physicist. Her acting is barely serviceable. I can't help but wonder why she's in this movie.
Are you here for a reason?
Oh, that's why. They could have at least cast someone who could pronounce the multisyllabic vocabulary needed to make the role believable. Judi Dench's M is great, as always, and this is the final film to feature an appearance from Desmond Llewellyn's Q, and it's bittersweet to watch him pass the torch to John Cleese. Cleese gets the heavy lifting in the sequence. Llewellyn definitely gets to get one or two good lines in there.
You're not here to think. You're here to do what I tell you.
It's nice to see. And Robbie Coltrane as that ex-KGB Russian gangster from GoldenEye. He is always great. You're a wizard.
Bond, James Bond.
2 out of 5. No, it's a great pun, and I stand by. 3 out of 5. So the villain of this film, it's interesting because we are introduced to her very early in the film, and she seems to be an ally or somebody that Bond has to take care of, but in a late turn twist, she turns out to be the brains behind the entire operation that he is going up against this film. Electra King, portrayed by Sophie Marceau. This woman is essentially a French Patty Hearst, in the sense that she's an heiress to a giant empire, was kidnapped by a bad guy, and then turned into a radical based on her kidnapping story. Our mistrust with her starts subtle, with a line being repeated by the guy who we think is the big bad, Reynard, portrayed by Robert Carlyle. And Reynard is kind of a perfect second-tier Bond villain. His look is kind of like Blofeld. He's kind of got a scarred face and a bald head, but that's it. He's a former KGB agent turned terrorist who, after surviving a bullet to the head, can no longer feel pain as the bullet slowly goes deeper into his skull. This ability of not being able to feel pain is brilliantly portrayed in his opening scene. But Reynard and Electra, their relationship is sexy as hell. It's not built on anything what anyone would call healthy, but pure animal lust from a woman who was psychologically damaged and a man who knows that he has an expiration date coming up. No future, just the present. Man, this movie fucks. They don't do it like these guys anymore. Once the heel turn is revealed, Sophie just chews the scenery every scene that she is in. You love to watch an actress love being a villain.
Nobody can resist me.
You are correct, mademoiselle. 4 out of 5. The plot is convoluted, but it does make sense. There's no egregious plot holes. Electra wants to create manufactured demand for her oil by blowing up Istanbul and ruining a pipeline that would lead to ruining Russia's oil supply, lowering the supply of other oil in the area and raising the demand for hers. And I have a not so solid grasp on economics, but it makes sense to me. So they steal a nuclear bomb, take out the plutonium, send the bomb back into an oil pipeline to make Bond go after it, and then bring the nuclear stuff to try to blow up a nuclear submarine where the Russians' pipeline is. Did you get that? And Bond has to stop it, especially after going on that wild goose chase. But they try to elevate this film for more than a run-of-the-mill bad guy of the week type plan. Electra wants to have revenge on M because M told her father not to ransom her when she was kidnapped. This forced her to spend more time as a hostage and radicalized her. It adds personal stakes to the villain. I like that, but it's overstuffed. Is it a revenge story? A megalomaniac trying to get power? The answer is yes, but in the most meh way possible. Completely inoffensive. 2 out of 5. So The World Is Not Enough comes out with a grand total of 15 out of 25. Let's see how Daniel Craig's third effort as James Bond turns out in Skyfall. 2012's Skyfall was the third to feature Daniel Craig as James Bond, and the first directed by Sam Mendes. And immediately we find ourselves in the hands of a true filmmaker. Like I said in the previous video, Mendes had directed some great films, but the opening scene in Skyfall, it's kind of perfect. I could go on about this scene, how Bond stopping to try to help a wounded agent in dire need of medical help, and M shouting in his ear to complete the mission, perfectly sets the stage for for the entire film. But I've got parameters to adhere to, so let's go. Writers are Purvis, Wade, and Logan again, and I would be remiss if I were not to mention that the cinematographer was Roger Deakins. Always fantastic. Blade Runner 2049, Fargo, The Shawshank fucking Redemption. Yeah, good. Do I really have to go into that great of detail? From the first blast of the horn, you know you're in for something special. Then the piano and Adele slowly build until we get to the chorus and everything just comes together. I fucking love this song. I had to replay this sequence 5 times because I was just jamming out to the song. Skyfall is one of the greatest Bond themes of all time. No, strike that. Skyfall is the greatest Bond theme of all time. Move over, Goldfinger. No, not that one. And the imagery in the montage. This is how you do it. Tombstones, pulling double duty, providing a thematic connection of death and resurrection, which is in the film, and a bit of foreshadowing if you're smart enough to pick up on it. We get images of China with the Chinese dragons representing the locations, Macau and Shanghai. We get silhouettes of this mansion with the stags everywhere, which turns out to be Bond's childhood home. This is a very ominous song, and skulls appear, as well as burning images of Bond as a shooting target, and a lady pointing a gun at the camera. And finally, we go full surreal with the kaleidoscope sequence. There's barely any sexy ladies dancing, but there is some, and the whole sequence ends with this bombastic moment where it looks like smoke is falling on the mansion covered in a blood-red sky. It sets the tone, and the song slaps. Give me another Adele theme, Eon, please. 5 out of 5. Never have my heart. The action set pieces, they're great, like stunning. The car chase turned bike chase turned fight on the train in Istanbul is so perfectly choreographed and looks so dangerous that I'm surprised nobody got hurt. The fight scene in Shanghai, it's one long take as we slowly zoom in as the fighting intensifies. And all we see are the silhouettes as they fight, which fits the location perfectly because if you've ever been to Shanghai, you'll know at night buildings are all lit up. So the film uses this by having glass reflections and light reflecting on the glass, using that as hiding. It's just so good. Then there's the London cat and mouse chase between Bond and Silva. It is thrilling and tense, which leads to one of the greatest punchlines that involves a train crashing into the scene.
I do hope that wasn't for me.
But that is.
Of all time. In the third act, just Home Alone with James Bond, Albert Finney, and a fucking attack helicopter. The action is humor, tension, and catharsis. Nothing to complain about here. 5 out of 5. We get introduced to Naomi Harris as Moneypenny and Ben Whishaw as Q, who both do great. Moneypenny and Bond trade barbs with each other in the field and in the office, bringing the charming rapport of sexual harassment to this iteration of Bond. And I've never wanted a shave more. And Q gets his classic wit, but this time with a generational change.
Were you expecting an exploding pen?
Oh shit!
Him being younger than James Bond is in this iteration. But this film is truly Judi Dench's M's film. She is essentially the Bond girl. Yes, there is Bernice Marlowe's Severine, who is elegant and absolutely a presence. But what do they say about stars that shine bright?
My turn. I win.
Silva has an axe to grind with M, and we'll certainly get into that later. But her connection to the villain of the piece makes her reflect on her life's work, that being sending spies out to execute targets, with her mind on the bigger picture and not the human element. She's not just barking orders at Bond in a headset, she's reevaluating her entire life as she is simultaneously being kicked out the door by higher-ups. And Albert Finney is a delight in the third act as an ally, being James Bond's groundskeeper of his childhood home. And I would be remiss if I didn't even get a chance to mention Rory Kinnear's Tanner, who's in all of the Daniel Craig Bond movies, but this one gives him the most to do. He's very good in this, but he is great in Penny Dreadful. 5 out of 5. Javier Bardem plays Raul Silva, who is instantly one of the most delightful James Bond villains to grace the screen. Bardem feasts on the scenery. He hams it up wholeheartedly.
Mommy was very bad.
His introductory scene is a single take of him walking from the end of a room to Bond while he's talking about rats eating each other. And it is everything. Okay, there is a bit of an off-putting, flamboyantly gay villain trope that he seems to be fitting into, but Bond hints that he's been with men previously in this film. Look, I don't have a place to say that this is good representation or bad representation. Look, it's not Bond sleeping the gay away out of Pussy Galore in Goldfinger. Silva is ruthless. He is cold, shown by his creative way of how he decides to shoot the glass off of Severine's head.
I win.
And he is completely focused on his plan. He was an agent for the MI6, and apparently M's favorite, who tried to kill himself while captured. The cyanide didn't do the job. So, disfigured and tortured, what he wants is vengeance. And it's vengeance on the one who set him up to fail. M. Everything he does in this movie is to get her to suffer like he suffered, until he is in a position for them to die together. It's vengeance, pure and simple. Bond, he's just an obstacle, and he treats him as such. And that look that he gives to Bond after Bond kills him before he can finally kill M, it's just so great. Thank you, Javier. Thank you. 4 out of 5. Okay. This one's weird. 2 films blow up the MI6 offices, and 2 films' villains want vengeance on M. That's just a weird coincidence that just happened. I don't know. I love how the opening of this movie is essentially Bond being Archer at the beginning of Heart of Archness, and shows that when given half the chance and not having the job to focus him, his self-destructive tendencies will just take over and will have him dead on a Caribbean island in like 5 years. This might actually be one of the few times we don't see James Bond actively on a mission. So it's very enlightening to see his broken psyche. But the plot revolves around Daniel Craig's James Bond being too old for the spy game, which doesn't feel genuine. I mean, it does, in the sense that his salt and, well, I can't say pepper because he's blonde. What's a yellow spice? Turmeric? Salt and turmeric? Stubble. Makes him feel older. But he's only had 2 movies prior to this one. And there was like a month of time that passed in those 2 movies total. They are essentially back-to-back films. You can't reboot a franchise to his first mission ever and then 2 movies later say, I'm too old for this shit. And of course, the film falls into the many copycats of The Dark Knight. This one isn't nearly egregious as Star Trek Into Darkness, but it's pretty obvious. Even both of them go to China. Batman goes to Hong Kong, Bond goes to Shanghai and Macau. But Skyfall is super fun, full of thrills and excitement, has some of the best character work of the Bond franchise, and is well worth the journey. 3 out of 5. So, with a total of 22 out of 25, Skyfall kicks the ever-living shit out of The World Is Not Enough. I'm going to stop here. Now there is 1 for Brosnan, 1 for Craig. See you guys next week. Like, share, subscribe.